Hello and welcome to another AfterMaths episode of the Primary Maths Podcast, the show where we talk all things primary maths. I'm Jon Cripwell.
And I'm Becky Brown.
Hello, Becky.
Hello. Long time no see, it feels, Jon.
I know. Although, if we're being transparent, we have been in a couple of meetings together already today, but we didn't manage to meet up for a podcast episode last week, did we? So I apologise to anybody who was desperately waiting to hear our dulcet tones last Friday, but things just conspired against us, didn't they, Becky?
Just couldn't get it together, could we? Very busy at the moment at work, so
yeah, that's what we'll say.
Finding the time was tricky. Yeah,
we'll say we were just too busy doing important math stuff. But no, we just couldn't find the time last week. So I apologise. However, in the meantime, I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed Tuesday's interview episode this week with Professor Lucy Cragg, which was all about multiplication, how we learn times tables, why some times tables seem to be easier to learn than others. So if you haven't managed to listen to that, I would go back and give it a listen. I'm going to put you on the spot, Becky. Have you managed to listen to that one yet?
I have listened and I loved it, Jon. I loved that we were coming from a slightly different angle to normal because Lucy was a psychologist rather than a teacher. So I loved that extra angle. I found it really interesting. Yeah, it's a great listen.
Yeah, there's some fantastic work coming out of the University of Nottingham in conjunction with the University of Loughborough, I think. So look out for that episode, and you can also check out Lucy and colleagues' research that they've conducted in this area, and it's ongoing as well. So I'm hoping, Becky, that we'll hear a little bit more from them in the near future. On the subject of new things and new things coming out, I should recommend that you like and subscribe to this channel or wherever you're listening to us at the moment so that you don't miss any new episodes. But also, we have in the last week or so had some very exciting news in that we can share that the new updated maths scheme from Twinkle is now available to sample and preview. Production is almost finished, Becky, on the scheme. It has been a labour of love for our colleagues and ourselves for quite some time now. A huge amount of work's gone into this to make sure that it is completely up to date and based on the latest research and things, all the stuff that we like to talk about on the podcast. So I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to go and have a look. It's totally free download for anybody with a Twinkle subscription to go and have a look at some of those resources. And the full scheme will be available a little bit later in the year.
Very exciting, Jon. Yes, like you say, big labour of love for a big team here at Twinkle, and very excited to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I say, it's got all of the things in it that we talk about, the idea of scaffolding built into it. It's got all the latest research-based pedagogy, essentially, challenge for all in every lesson, and not just at the end of the lesson and things, opportunities to think more deeply. Oracy is built into there. It's completely adapted. I could go on, and we will do a little bit of a deep dive into it in an episode, because I think it is interesting to look at how these things come to be and the thought that goes into making a resource like that. But it's been fascinating to be part of that project, even in only a fairly small way on my behalf. And I'm hoping, Becky, that we'll be able to share some exciting news on the project that you've been working on that we keep teasing people about in the near future as well. So look out for that coming too.
Yeah, hopefully not too long, Jon.
However, in the meantime, just based on what we were talking about with Professor Lucy Cragg earlier this week, I have been delving into the MTC, the multiplication tables check, which is something that most pupils in year 4 in England and Wales take part in each year, and the window for it will be opening up in the next couple of months. It's an online test. See, it's not a test, is it, Becky? It's a check.
It's not.
It's a check.
Yeah.
But it was first mooted. I thought I'd just go into the history of it a tiny bit, just see where it's come from, because it's unusual internationally. Most other jurisdictions don't do a check in this way. Most of them, yeah, they might have a fluency check, some of them, but I couldn't
Mhm.
find anybody else really that does a standardized tables check. Certainly not at this age. So I thought it was interesting just to have a quick sort of delve into where this came from, really, and then some of the interesting stats and figures around it as well, because you know that we love a few stats and numbers, don't we, Becky?
We
Um,
do.
so it was first announced by the DfE in 2017 under the previous Conservative government. And if you remember, it was part of a sort of wider push on core knowledge. It was a very knowledge based focus at the time, as opposed to a skills based focus in the curriculum. And particularly in primary maths as well. Standards in primary maths were being looked at. And
Mhm.
so it was announced that there would be a check on times tables knowledge in year 4. Schools were invited to take part in a pilot in 2019. I don't know if anybody listening was part of that pilot. My school at the time, we did take part in it. We thought that it was, interesting to get a look at what was coming down the road.
Yeah.
So we took part in it, and it was became statutory in 2020, but it didn't take place in 2020. There's a good quiz question for you. Now, what on earth might have happened in 2020 that delayed the sort of implementation of such an important check? Do you think, Becky?
Well, never mind the Olympics being delayed. The delay of the MTC is right up there, isn't it? I'm assuming
Absolutely.
it's COVID related, was it, John?
Yeah, it was, yeah. COVID disruption cancelled or postponed the implementation of this check in 2020 and in 2021, but the first full national run then took place in 2022. So that was kind of the first time that we had a full national data set, and it's been going since. So it's kind of been around in some form in terms of, it's been 9 years since they announced it. And this should be its 6th full year running. But obviously, in reality, we've only got
Mm.
4 years of data at the moment. For anybody who's not familiar with it, maybe you don't teach in year 4 or you're listening outside of England, it's an online check. It's children sit at a digital device of some sort, be it a laptop, desktop, tablet, whatever. It's 25 questions, and pupils have 6 seconds per questions, and it focuses on tables up to 12 by 12 times 12. But it's not random. Did you know that, Becky?
I did, yes. I
I
think I
thought
did
you
a
did.
teach meet last year with Sally, and we talked a little bit about the weighting of different questions and things in the
Indeed, yeah.
MTC.
And is that Teach Meet still available for people to go
It
and have
is
a look at?
still available on the Twinkle website. Yeah, you could search for it, Teach Me and MTC, and it should come up.
Yep. And in fact, I'm running another one in at the start of May. So if you would like to see it live, as it were, and for free, I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So roughly around each year, around 70% of pupils score 25 out of 25, or certainly in the latest national data, that was the percentage of pupils that were scoring 25 out of 25. There isn't, as we've said before, there isn't a pass mark for this. It isn't a pass-fail test. But I think what that has led to, given that there's no official guidance from the DfE about what a good score is or what a pass is, it means that schools, trusts, and local authorities are kind of making up their own idea of what their pupils should be attaining. The average score, though, Becky, sits at around 20 out of 25. So, yeah, that's a fairly top-heavy kind of distribution, really.
Yeah.
And I think it possibly raises some interesting questions.
Yeah. I mean, interesting, John, isn't it? I wonder, I mean, one of the main things for the MTC was that it wasn't just about this check. It was about tooling children up, making sure they had those facts at their fingertips for later maths. So it's interesting to see if there's a correlation between the results in the MTC and the results later on.
Yes, well, we're not seeing that so far, and I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? Really, that
Yeah.
it 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 does a good job of checking recall of facts, but I'm not sure it does anything in terms of checking reasoning. So automaticity, yes. Reasoning and understanding, no. But I think what was interesting was that Teacher Tapp did some surveys on this recently, and 59% of Key Stage 2 teachers now support the MTC. They see it as a beneficial thing. So more than
that's
half,
interesting.
which is up from the same survey that they did 3 or 4 years ago now, where it was about 50%, I think. And 50% of Key Stage 2 teachers say multiplication has, or multiplication security has improved in year 6. Now, they're not necessarily saying that that's because of the MTC, but, it was all part of the same survey. So it would sort of figure that they had that in mind. So that is interesting, isn't it? That Key Stage 2 teachers particularly are seeing the benefits of the MTC. Alongside that, though, there has been an increase in reported cases of maladministration of the MTC, which, again, for a test that's supposed to be low stakes and doesn't feed into league tables or school data and things, it's interesting. It's very small numbers, very, very small numbers. It increased from 14 cases last year to, 2 years ago, to 30 cases in the latest SDA report. So, not huge numbers, but it doubled in a year. So, maybe just indicative of the pressure that teachers feel to still be getting certain results, even, or maybe, wanting to help children feel like they're being successful might be the other thing that you might say about that. I guess we don't know. We're just speculating.
It comes back again, doesn't it, to that assessment-driven ethos and the effect that can have, and why we're really doing things and things that we might do that don't have an impact on the children that we would like.
Yeah,
but are
yeah,
almost
and
ticking a box.
Whilst it isn't published anywhere, schools do have the data, obviously, but Ofsted also have the data too. So, it's I can see why it's supposed to be a low stakes check. I can see the benefit of the check, but no system is perfect, I think, is what we're saying. And based on what Professor Lucy Cragg was saying in Tuesday's interview episode, that there's very little data to suggest that just learning the facts on their own has any kind of beneficial impact on the pupil's ability to problem solve, for instance, using multiplication. We know it may reduce cognitive load for those who are secure in their understanding. That has a benefit. But if you are not secure in your understanding, simply knowing the facts doesn't appear to have a beneficial impact on your ability to problem solve or to reason or to think mathematically. So one of the other potential downsides, I would say, of the MTC is that it has focused very much teachers' attention on learning the facts and being able to recall them quickly. And maybe that has come at the expense of being able to spend time on understanding those things instead. I would much rather a pupil have the ability to work out what 6 times 7 was from related facts, maybe 6 times 6, and that taking them 7 seconds, than just knowing 6 times 7 is 42, but not understanding what that means or being able to use it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I think conversations around times tables facts, we've had them for years, haven't we? And I think there are some teachers who would say that their recall isn't within 6 seconds of all the facts, but they are more than capable of recalling them, like you say, using related facts and so on. So you could argue that you don't necessarily, that 6 seconds, it's interesting, isn't it? Using that 6 seconds as the target time.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, if it was taking 6 minutes, there's an issue there and we don't have the skills we need to be able to calculate it. But 6 seconds, like you say, 7 seconds is probably just enough, just as good.
Yeah, I would say so. And obviously, within all of this as well, we've got things about accessibility and inclusion and, just making the number of times I've fumbled on the keypad and typed in the wrong digits when I'm answering questions against the clock and things and you're rushing. I think at the end of the day, teachers know, if you're a teacher in that class, Becky, you know which children know their times tables and which ones don't.
Yeah.
I think, though, what it has done is that it has focused teachers on making sure that those times tables are being covered in some way. And I think that is a good thing. So, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
But overall, Key Stage 2 teachers certainly seem to feel like the MTC is having overall a benefit. So that's good.
Yeah. Great.
Be interested to hear anybody else's thoughts on that, though. If you want to get in touch, share your thoughts, opinions, or experiences of the MTC, just drop us an email, primarymathspodcast@twinkle.co.uk. So, Becky, I believe you have a small maths of life for us this week, which I'm quite excited about, because you mentioned something earlier and then said, no, I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm saving it for the podcast.
Yes.
And I have been intrigued ever since.
Yes. So my maths of life this week, and there is a very small element of maths involved, but I thought the story was worth sharing, absolutely. And actually a very good example of how maths is used in real life as well, although it may be slightly above Key Stage 2. So I live down on the south coast, and I live very close to Marwell Zoo. And this week, well, actually last week, a capybara escaped from the zoo. So there were actually two. Yes, so these two new capybaras had been put into a temporary enclosure, and initially both managed to escape from said enclosure. One of them,
Capybara 2, the Marwell 2,
yes,
on the run.
one of the, I know.
Please tell me they're
Well,
called Bonnie and Clyde or something like that. No.
no, but interestingly, that I did find a news story about. I don't know if it was capybaras, but that animals were called Bonnie and Clyde for that reason. They'd escaped
Yes.
at the beginning, and I'll talk a little bit more about zoo escapes later. But so 17th of March this happened. So 9 days ago, Samba,
Still on the run.
yeah, the capybara escaped, and the local. Well, it's been on the national news as well now, but local businesses have flooded social media with pictures to raise awareness of the fact that Samba needs to be found.
You meant of the capybara using their facilities, just
yes, well, that's what they. Yes,
oh, okay, right,
that's what they did.
Right,
so we've had capybaras having haircuts, capybaras in the fish and chip shop, having a drink at the pub.
Well, I'm guessing this is all AI. Is it? Is
yes,
that another great use of AI?
Yeah, and there have been sightings. So she was seen. Somebody at a pub quiz looked out of the window and saw her outside, and she was seen then. And this is why the raising of awareness is that somebody was out walking their dog along the river and has a video of the capybara by the riverside being chased into the water by their dog.
Oh no. We don't
and
want that.
The latest, I know, and the latest sighting was about 3 minutes walk from my house. So it is very, very local to me, very, very exciting. But
I really want a capybara just to appear over your shoulder now. Just
keep looking outside in the garden just in case.
Yeah. Is your maths then around the probability of spotting a capybara in on the south coast is never quite zero? Is that?
Yes. Well, I mean, almost. And this is certainly not the only ever escape of a capybara. Last year, there was another one in Shropshire somewhere that escaped for a week and was refound. So
Who
obviously
knew they were
good
so?
at escaping.
Yeah. Who knew
I know.
they were such good escape artists?
Yeah. So obviously, they are desperate to find her. Capybaras can move at up to 20 miles per hour. They're quite stocky animals, aren't they? That's quite a surprise.
Yeah.
But of course, I was looking into how the search aspects of the search theory they're using. So of course, if you think about the static capybara when she first escaped, within an hour, she couldn't get any further than 20 miles away. That would be her maximum speed. And of course, she probably wasn't running at that speed.
Surely they can't maintain 20 miles an hour for an hour.
Yeah, but of course, to generate the search area, the initial search area, you would be using circle rules, wouldn't you? Because every point from a set point would create a circle with a radius of 20 miles. So that is how they originally start finding that search area. I mean, they then consider things like the psychology of capybaras and where they're likely to be by a river. And like you said, they're not going to run for 20 miles per hour straight for an hour.
That reminds me of that old TV series Cracker. Did they bring him in, the psychologist in, to hunt down the capybara? Capybara
Yes.
psychologist.
But even if that capybara was completely still, a circle with a radius of 20 miles, thinking back to our last conversation a couple of weeks ago on pi, would have an area of 400 pi, which is 1,256 square miles. And that is before she starts
Wow.
moving.
Wow.
So you can see
I'm
why
trying to
maybe
find
it's
a
not been.
capybara in a, whatever.
Yes.
Needle and haystack
Yes.
analogy you want to go for. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thought it was just quite interesting to think, actually, then she starts moving. So, of course, that place you're looking will move depending on her latest sighting. And I just thought that if I was teaching now locally, bearing in mind it's all anybody is talking about, what a great thing to do to come off timetable for the day and to do some capybara escape related things.
Yes.
And you could do some great things. And I started looking around things like other escape animals. I mean, they're not always.
I mean, there's so many cross-curricular opportunities, aren't there? You could do all sorts around, wanted posters and persuasive letters, and as
Yeah.
well as obviously the maths, which clearly just lends itself really well. Sorry,
Yeah.
Becky, you were saying other escapees.
Yeah, so you could look into other escapees. So I've mentioned there was Cinnamon, the capybara that escaped from a zoo in Shropshire, but there was also a capybara called Tango who escaped from Jersey Zoo also in last year. So these are all in the last sort of 2 years. And some other animals. So a lynx escaped from Dartmoor Zoo and was on the run for 3 weeks before it was discovered.
Wow.
And this is my favourite story that sorry, there's not much maths here, but I just have to share it.
No.
That Honshu the macaque escaped from Highland Wildlife Park. And
Macaque, that's
survived
like a small monkey,
like a
isn't it? Is that
monkey.
right? Yeah.
Survived in what was at the time some very snowy Cairngorms for 5 days, and eventually was spotted snacking on some leftover Yorkshire pudding that someone had put out on a bird table, and that's how they captured him. So
Excellent.
yeah,
I always knew that Yorkshire pudding would be their downfall. That's
I know. So
yeah.
there are lots of things you could. I feel like this is one of those things where
If
you
I was on
could
the run, Becky, you could probably trap me with a decent Yorkshire pudding
Yorkshire
as well.
pudding.
Yeah,
Yes,
decent Yorkshire
that's
pudding.
what you could
If
use.
I ever go missing, that's the way to lure me back.
That's what we'll use.
Yeah, please do.
So
I mean,
so just
we were talking earlier, weren't we, with our friend and colleague and friend of the show, Sally, who mentioned when she was growing up, the circus came to town and they temporarily misplaced 4 lions who escaped into the town centre. And there's a brilliant picture. I wonder if we could put this in the show notes. Brilliant picture of a member of the circus helping police with their inquiries. Of all the people in the circus to help the police with their inquiries, so a picture of the circus member and the police officer stood next to each other discussing the escaped lions. Who was it out of the circus that was pictured there? A clown, obviously, in full clown, like that's all they ever wear.
Yes.
Get up in the morning, put your clown face on, put your oversized shoes on, your baggy trousers, your braces, off you go to go and find some lions. That must have been great promotion for the circus, I would have thought at the time. But yeah, animal escapes. We had hamster. It makes it sound like we had an infestation. We kept my first couple of pets were hamsters, and they, I seem to remember, were incredible escape artists. And definitely one of them, who we might have named Mischief even before she disappeared. She was at large in the house somewhere for at least a month before we finally caught her again. So these animals, they can, they have ways of making it work back in the wild. Yeah,
that's it. So she's hopefully she's having the time of her life, and will eventually. Well, by the time the podcast goes out, maybe she'll be discovered. Hopefully, it won't take long. And there are various sightings, but of course they go underwater and they can breathe underwater for 5 minutes, so can travel that way. So yeah, it's not an easy
there's
feat.
a Netflix documentary or animation in this somewhere, isn't there? Definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely a book in there, isn't there? That could be. Yeah.
Dick King Smith would have made a lot out of
yes.
He would have been great for this.
It's a really good example of how taking something, particularly if it's a local news story and it's places that people know, and you can show BBC clips, how you can I hope there's still time in curriculum today for teachers to do that. It'd be interesting to hear if anyone's done that with a news story and made a day of it and brought the maths in and a bit of everything else.
Yeah, well done for trying to get this story back towards teaching, Becky. But I think
Yeah.
the moment's gone. Really, we're just talking about escaped animals now. If you have been attacked by an escaped macaque, please do or capybara, please do let us know by emailing primarymathspodcast@twinkle.co.uk. So I am going to bring this back to teaching just for a couple of minutes,
Please
if that's
do.
okay, with a final feature, which is some research in 60 seconds. I'm not going to ask you to time me this time, Becky, because I think we all know it's going to be more like 2 or 3 minutes.
Definitely.
However, I'll do my best to keep it concise. You know that we like to bring you the latest up-to-date pedagogical research on this show. So be prepared for some research in 60 seconds this week, all the way from the 1970s and 80s. But I thought it was pertinent to some of the things that we've been talking about recently, in particular the idea of pace in lessons and how we can engage children in mathematical thinking particularly, and that idea of equity as well across the classroom. And actually, this is something that a few of our guests have talked about as well. I'm thinking of Michael Gardner, Omar Jennings, talking about oracy and number talks and those sorts of things. Have mentioned this idea. If you've been in teaching for any length of time, this probably isn't new, but it's a good reminder, I think. What am I talking about? Well, it's some research from Mary Budd Rowe, conducted in the 70s and 80s. I don't think that much has changed in 40 plus years. She found that teachers typically wait 1 second, roughly, after asking a question before expecting a response, which is not a lot of time, is it, Becky? I think I give you more than that sometimes on this podcast.
Yes.
So why is that a problem? Well, what she found was that if we could increase that to just 3 seconds, which again is not a lot of time, what happened was that pupils were typically able to give longer, more thoughtful responses. More pupils contributed. It wasn't just the fastest hand. We all know that people in class that is, if you ask a question, God bless them, they won't let you down. Their hand will be straight up. But we want other people to contribute as well, don't we? So more pupils contributing, more pupils asking more questions themselves, and higher quality of reasoning. That was the key thing for me as well, really. And that was just by extending it to 3 seconds.
Wow.
So question for you, Becky, and I'll give you 3 seconds to think about this. Why don't we typically as teachers wait a little longer? What is it? Why is it that we ask a question and expect almost an immediate response, do you think?
My thought is, and I think we've talked about this before, is that although we know that the people working hardest in the classroom should be the children, as teachers, it's really hard not to be the person doing all the work. And I think, funnily enough, I was talking to a group of TAs this week about scaffolding and about how at the beginning, you just need to give them time, give the children and learners time to try to do something independently first. But that's a really hard thing to do because it can look like you're not doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's probably what it comes down to.
Another friend of the show who was on a previous episode, Tom Isherwood, he often says, as a teacher, he feels like he's doing his best work when he appears to be doing nothing at all. And I think there's something in that. Yeah, yes, part of the job is teaching, and that does mean standing at the front and talking. But actually, when the pupils are doing the work, and it appears like you're not actually doing that much, even though clearly what you are doing at that point is observing and thinking and looking for where you can make an impact. Often that's where the best learning is going on, isn't it? But there is that feeling, that slight discomfort when there's a long silence in a classroom, especially if you've got the joy of having people, other adults in the room observing you.
Yeah.
That's when you want that one child who always puts their hand up to come to your rescue, don't you? And help you out when, when you see blank looks in other children's faces. But I just thought it was a good reminder that, a simple thing like just extending it just to 3 seconds before you let anybody put their hand up. I think that's the key, because sometimes when children see other children's hands go up, they feel like they can sit back and take a back seat almost. And we can end up with that passive learning or passive approach that we really don't want. So it's another reason why mini whiteboards are great, aren't they? But I think we just need to be careful that it's not, here's the question and then, okay, show me your whiteboards in 3, 2, 1. That barely time to write down the answer, let alone think about it before writing it down. So just giving some thinking time can make a massive difference. And I know, particularly in problem solving, we talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, didn't we? In so much as I was at an event where we were asked to solve some problems. We were given the problems, we were given a good chunk of time. It allowed me time to think about something else and then come back to the problem and, deal with it that way, which helped me to actually answer it. Giving people, including children, time to think turns out to be really useful. So that was some research from Mary Budlow. But the idea that, just 1 second we expect an answer back. Has that changed in 40 years? I don't know.
I don't know. I think we see a lot of think, pair, share now, don't we? Or I think if you're really conscious of it and you're doing it like that, it might be easier to do it. But I think it is very easy to slip back into just expecting an answer or taking the first answer.
Equally, though, I'm not even necessarily, I don't think it's only when we're talking whole class teaching, when we're working one-to-one with the pupil as well.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we expect, and if they don't give us that answer within a second or two, we might try rephrasing the question, or we might try showing them something. And again, it goes back to the work that TAs do, that idea that you've asked the question, then you can sit there for 5, 6, 7 seconds and not offer any support. Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But actually, I think it's really important.
Yeah. This is what the conversation was this week around scaffolding, and just trusting that observing was actually one of the most powerful things you could do. Although, as we've just said, it might look like you're not doing anything. Knowing at the time at which you should make that intervention, and maybe start with a prompting question before you give too many clues away. But it's hard. It's much easier said than done.
Yes. Yeah. But just a reminder, I think, for myself as much as anybody else, that thinking time is critical and not a waste of time at all. So I think that's just about us, Becky, for this week. We will not be back on Tuesday with another interview episode, because for the majority of our neighbours in England, it will be the Easter holidays. Not, I note, for Lincolnshire schools. You've got another week to go. A couple of other areas as well, possibly. But for many, many schools across the country, today is, if you're listening to this on Friday when it comes out, the last day of term, and I hope you have a fantastic Easter break. Becky and I will be back, though, next Friday with another AfterMaths episode, possibly with some Easter maths for you. We'll keep it light. There will not be too much school-based chat, don't worry. But, if you're missing some maths over the Easter break, don't worry, we are here for you. But the interviews will return in 2 weeks' time after the Easter break.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you along on the AfterMaths, and please do share the podcast to help others find it as well. We do appreciate that.
Do you know what would be lovely, Becky? If some more kind people were to leave us a very quick review, even if that's just a star rating. Some lovely people have done that already. I would love it if a few more would just take a couple of moments just to tap those. Well, I don't want to say tap all 5 stars. If you don't feel it's a 5-star show, you don't feel the need to tap all 5. But if you do, I would absolutely love it. And I know it would make Becky smile too. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, if you find a bit of time over Easter to do that, we'd appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll see you next Friday. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
See you next time.